She fell asleep beside her luggage until a cowboy carried her into his wagon. Lyra Danvers shifted uneasily, trying to find a comfortable position on the rough, sandy ground. The wind swept across the deserted spaceport, carrying tiny grains of rust-colored dust that stung her cheeks. She glanced down at her luggage, a battered case that had traveled more light years than she cared to count. It lay beside her like an anchor, half buried in the sand. She yawned and pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders. Her legs ached, and her eyelids felt heavier with each passing second. She had flown across 3-star systems in a cramped shuttle, endured hours of transit through turbulent atmospheres, and now, here she was, stranded on a planet where no one seemed to notice her. Lyra tried to stand but wobbled and sank back to the ground with a soft groan. Her legs refused to cooperate. Around her, the spaceport was silent. Rusted metal hangars leaned at odd angles, some half buried in sand, as if the planet itself was trying to swallow them. The automated gates were long broken, blinking uselessly with dim red lights. A few distant shadows moved, perhaps small creatures or dust devils, but nothing human. A sigh escaped Lyra's lips. She had thought this would be a routine stopover, a brief pause before reaching the frontier colony where she would finally begin her exploration work. But the planet had other plans. Now, tired, cold, and hungry, she had no choice but to rest. She leaned against her luggage, eyes closing despite the harsh wind. The sun hung low in the sky, an amber ball barely visible through the swirling dust. Lyra's breathing slowed and she slipped into a light, uneasy sleep. In her dreams, she was drifting through endless star fields, surrounded by bright nebulae and the hum of distant engines. But the peacefulness didn't last long. Something stirred nearby, a faint movement against the horizon. Lyra shifted in her sleep, groaning softly. The sound was small, but it carried across the still spaceport. The movement grew closer, and soon the dusty horizon seemed to take shape. A figure appeared, riding a strange, hovering wagon that kicked up a small cloud of dust. It moved with a calm, deliberate pace, unlike anything Lyra had seen before. The figure wore a wide-brimmed hat, casting a shadow over his face. A long coat flapped against the wind, and sturdy boots rested on the wagon's footboard. There was something familiar about him, something human, but also something entirely untamed, a presence that seemed at home in the raw emptiness of the planet. Lyra stirred awake, blinking against the sunlight and dust. She tried to sit up, but exhaustion made her slump back against her luggage. Her heart raced as she watched the figure slow near her. The wagon stopped, and the stranger climbed down with surprising ease for someone who appeared so rugged. He approached silently, boots crunching on the sand. Lyra's instincts screamed caution, but she felt no immediate threat, only a strange curiosity. He paused a few steps away, surveying her as if he had been expecting her. "You alone?" he asked, his voice low, calm, and edged with a rough charm. Lyra swallowed. "Yes, I didn't expect anyone else here." He nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon before returning to her. "Storm coming, you can't stay here." Before she could protest, he knelt and lifted her luggage with ease. She blinked in surprise. The bag was heavier than it looked, yet he held it as if it weighed nothing. What are you doing?" she asked. "Taking you somewhere safe," he said simply. "Somewhere safe," Lyra echoed, unsure. She wanted to argue, to refuse, but the wind was picking up. Dust swirled around them, stinging her eyes, and a low, eerie hum began to rise from the desert plains. The sense of danger was undeniable. The stranger extended his hand. Hesitant, Lyra took it, allowing him to lift her into the wagon. The interior smelled faintly of metal, oil, and something earthy. It was warm inside, a stark contrast to the bitter wind outside. As the wagon rose slightly off the ground, gliding smoothly over the uneven sand, Lyra took her first real look at her rescuer. His hat shadowed most of his face, but his eyes were sharp, observant. There was a calm confidence about him, a sense that he had survived much worse than this dusty frontier planet. "I'm Kane," he said simply, glancing at her. "You're lucky I came along." "I thank you," Lyra replied, still catching her breath. "I'm Lyra. I don't even know if anyone else is on this planet." Kane's expression didn't change. "Not many. You're near the edge of human expansion. Most colonies are far beyond this point. Some of them don't even know this place exists." The wagon moved steadily, and Lyra tried to take in the scenery. Endless stretches of orange sand, jagged rock formations, and scattered remnants of abandoned spaceport equipment stretched in every direction. The planet was harsh and unwelcoming, yet there was a strange beauty in the barren landscape. "Why are you here?" she asked softly. Kane glanced at her, eyes briefly meeting hers before returning to the horizon. "I help people get through places like this. Places most humans can't survive." Lyra's curiosity overcame her fatigue. You live here, alone?" Kane shook his head. "Not alone, there are others. Small colonies scattered. We watch, protect, and trade when necessary. Survival here isn't easy, but humans manage." Lyra felt a flicker of pride at his words. It was strange. She had always admired human ingenuity, but seeing it firsthand on a planet this hostile made it feel real. Here, humans didn't have the comfort of machines or easy travel. They had to think, adapt, and act. That was the true frontier. The wagon's engines hummed, a low, steady vibration beneath her. Lyra leaned back, letting herself relax a little. She asked more questions about the planet, the colonies, and the dangers that lurked beyond the desert plains. Kane answered sparingly, his words deliberate, each one carrying weight. Hours passed. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of red and purple. The desert wind died down, leaving an eerie silence that made Lyra aware of every creak of the wagon, every whisper of shifting sand. Eventually, Kane slowed the wagon, stopping at a small cluster of rocks that formed a natural shelter. He helped Lyra down, and she could see small signs of habitation, footprints, a makeshift fire pit, and crude tools left near the rocks. "This is where you'll rest tonight," Kane said. "The rest of the journey will have to wait until dawn." Lyra nodded, grateful. She watched him as he worked quietly to prepare a small fire, the flames casting flickering shadows across his rugged features. There was something comforting in his presence, someone who understood the harshness of this world and could navigate it with skill and confidence. As night fell, Lyra huddled near the fire, feeling safer than she had in days. The stars above were bright and countless, scattered across the dark sky like a map of the universe. She thought about how small and fragile she felt in the vastness of space, yet also how powerful humans were in their ability to survive, adapt, and help each other in impossible situations. Kane sat beside her, keeping watch. He didn't speak, but his quiet presence was enough. Lyra drifted off to sleep, finally feeling a sense of security. Tomorrow, the journey would continue, and she would learn more about this strange, dangerous, and extraordinary frontier and the humans who called it home. Somewhere in the darkness, beyond the light of the fire, she could feel that the planet held many secrets, and that humans, even on the edge of the galaxy, had a way of thriving where others could not. And in the distance, the faint hum of the hovering wagon reminded her that her journey had only just begun. The morning sun rose slowly, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. Lyra woke to the quiet crackle of the small fire Kane had kept alive through the night. She stretched stiffly, feeling the aches of a night spent on rough ground. The wind had died down, leaving only the soft whisper of sand sliding across the rocks. Kane was already awake, tending to the wagon. Its metal panels gleamed faintly in the early light, and the hover engines hummed softly. Lyra admired the way he moved, calm, precise, as if every motion had been practiced 100 times before. She had never seen anyone handle a machine like that in such a hostile environment. "You ready?" Kane asked, his voice low but steady. I think so, Lyra replied, brushing dust from her jacket. She glanced at her luggage, still securely fastened in the wagon. Where exactly are we going? Kane shrugged slightly. There's a small colony a day's ride from here. You'll be safer there, and you'll learn what it really means to survive out here. The words carried more weight than Lyra expected. Survival. It was a simple word, but on this planet it meant more than living. It meant thinking, adapting, and acting faster than anything the desert, or its creatures, could throw at you. Lyra climbed into the wagon beside Kane, and he guided the hovercraft over the uneven sand. The ride was smoother than she expected, though every bump and dip reminded her that the land beneath was wild and untamed. She held onto the side rail, her eyes scanning the horizon. The desert stretched endlessly, broken only by jagged rock formations and scattered wrecks of old supply pods. It was easy to feel small here, insignificant against the vast, empty landscape. But Kane's calm presence reminded her that humans had ways of mastering even the most inhospitable worlds. Hours passed in near silence. Lyra watched Kane carefully, noticing the way he adjusted the wagon's engines when the sand shifted, how he listened to the wind, and how he scanned the horizon for movement. He was not just a traveler, he was a guardian, a pioneer who had learned to read the land like a book. You seem to know this place well, Lyra said finally, breaking the silence. Kane glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. You pick up on the little things, most people don't. I guess I've had some practice, she replied, smiling faintly. But this is a whole different world. Kane didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pointed toward a distant ridge. See that? That's where the sand shifts the fastest. You could sink if you're not careful. Machines get stuck here, even wagons like mine. You need to respect it. Lyra nodded, impressed. It was easy to think that a machine could solve every problem, but Kane was proving otherwise. Humans had survived here not because of machines alone, but because they understood the land, adapted to it, and used every bit of knowledge at their disposal. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath the wagon. A low, guttural roar echoed across the desert. Lyra's heart raced. She had heard rumors of the creatures that roamed the wastelands, but she had never seen one up close. Kane's eyes narrowed. "Stay down," he said calmly. Before Lyra could ask, a massive creature burst from behind a ridge. It was unlike anything she had seen, scaled, muscular, with long claws and a mouth full of jagged teeth. Its eyes glowed faintly red, scanning for prey. The creature charged, sending sand spraying in all directions. Lyra froze, fear gripping her, but Kane didn't hesitate. He steered the wagon sharply to the side, narrowly avoiding the creature's claws. With a flick of his wrist, he triggered a small energy pulse from the wagon, sending the predator staggering back. "It's not enough to fight it head-on," Kane said. "You have to outthink them." Lyra swallowed, her fear giving way to determination. She scanned the surroundings and noticed a narrow crevice between two rock formations. "There," she shouted. "We can lead it there." Kane nodded, and together they maneuvered the wagon toward the crevice. The creature followed, crashing into the rocks and forcing a small avalanche that trapped it temporarily. Lyra's heart pounded, but she felt a thrill of triumph. Humans were clever, adaptable, and resourceful, and that made all the difference. After the creature disappeared, Kane finally spoke. "Not bad, you think fast when it matters. Most would have panicked." Lyra smiled, feeling a mix of relief and pride. "I had a good teacher," she said. Kane gave her a faint smirk but didn't respond. He focused on the road ahead, the desert stretching endlessly before them. The encounter had been dangerous, but it reinforced something Lyra had suspected all along. Humans could survive, even thrive, in ways no other species could match. The day passed slowly, the sun rising high and beating down on them with relentless heat. Lyra tried to nap, but the ride was too bumpy. She watched Kane work quietly, adjusting the wagon's hover systems, repairing minor damage, and keeping a careful eye on the terrain. Every move was deliberate, precise, and necessary. As evening approached, the horizon glowed with the soft light of the setting sun. Lyra spotted faint structures in the distance, simple buildings made of stone and metal, partially hidden by rocks. The colony. Kane guided the wagon carefully, slowing as they approached. A few figures appeared near the outskirts, armed with basic tools and protective gear. They watched the wagon with cautious curiosity. It was clear they were not used to visitors, but humans had a way of recognizing one another, even on the edge of the galaxy. One of the colonists stepped forward, a woman with sun-darkened skin and sharp eyes. "Who's there?" she called. Kane raised a hand in greeting. "We come in peace. I bring a traveler." The woman studied Lyra, then nodded. "Bring her in. She's safe now." The wagon rolled into the colony slowly, the soft hum of the engines mingling with the quiet murmur of the settlers. Lyra climbed down, legs wobbly but steady. She looked around, amazed at what she saw. The colony was simple, functional, and alive. Humans had carved life from the harsh desert using ingenuity, cooperation, and sheer determination. Kane led her to a small dwelling, handing her luggage over to a waiting colonist. "You'll rest here, eat, hydrate. Tomorrow, you'll learn how we survive." Lyra felt a warmth she hadn't experienced in days. Humans had turned this barren wasteland into a home, proving once again that adaptability and courage were more powerful than any machine. That night, Lyra sat by the fire with the colonists. They shared simple food and stories of survival, tales of sandstorms that could bury entire outposts, of predators that hunted without mercy, and of ingenious traps humans had devised to protect themselves. Lyra listened, fascinated. Every story emphasized the same truth: humans were clever, brave, and determined. Kane sat nearby, his eyes on the horizon. Lyra noticed that despite the apparent calm, he remained alert. He had survived on the frontier for years, learning to anticipate danger before it arrived. Humans could adapt, improvise, and outthink threats that others would consider impossible. As the fire crackled, Lyra realized something profound. She was tired, yes, but more than that, she felt inspired. Humans could endure hardship, create safety where none existed, and face danger with courage and intelligence. She was seeing firsthand what it truly meant to be human. When she finally went to sleep, it was with a sense of hope and purpose. Tomorrow, the journey would continue. She would learn more about the desert, the creatures that roamed it, and the humans who had tamed it with nothing but skill, ingenuity, and courage. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the colony, Lyra felt that the desert held many more secrets, and that humanity, even at the edge of the galaxy, would continue to thrive against all odds. The morning sun climbed over the jagged rock formations, casting long shadows across the small desert colony. Lyra awoke to the smell of cooked grains and fresh water, something she hadn't tasted in days. Her muscles ached from the journey, but she felt an energy she hadn't known since leaving her ship, a mix of curiosity and wonder. Kane was already awake, checking the wagon systems. The engines hummed softly, a reassuring presence in the quiet morning. Lyra watched him for a moment, amazed at how naturally he moved, as if he and the wagon were one. "You'll want to eat," Kane said, glancing at her, "and then you'll see what life here is really like." Lyra nodded, grateful for the guidance. She followed him toward the center of the colony, where simple buildings clustered together, constructed from rock, metal, and whatever materials the settlers could salvage from the desert. Windbreaks and solar panels, some repaired from old spacecraft, lined the pathways. Small gardens grew in shaded nooks, proof that humans could coax life from even the harshest environments. "This place, it's incredible," Lyra said softly, stepping over a cracked metal plate and avoiding a patch of spiny desert plants. "How do people survive here?" Kane smiled faintly. "Humans are clever. We don't just survive, we adapt. We use everything we have and we watch the land. You can't fight a planet, you have to understand it." They passed a group of children, laughing as they chased a small mechanical drone that zipped between the buildings. Lyra smiled at the sight. Even on the frontier, humans found ways to live, to play, to keep hope alive. A woman approached them, carrying a basket of water. Her face was lined with years of sun and wind, but her eyes were bright and welcoming. "Kane," she greeted, "and you brought someone new." "This is Lyra," Kane said. "She'll be staying with us for a while. She wants to learn." The woman nodded at Lyra. "Then you've come to the right place. I'm Mara. We'll teach you how to live here, how to survive, and how to thrive." Lyra followed Mara to a small building near the colony's center. Inside, the air was cool, and the walls were lined with shelves holding supplies: food, water filters, tools, and medical kits. A cot stood in one corner, and Lyra felt a wave of relief. She had her own space, at least for now. "You'll need to rest again later," Mara said, "but first, you'll see the colony." The two women stepped outside, and Lyra's eyes widened at the sight. The colony was larger than she had imagined. Paths wound between buildings, small solar arrays hummed with energy, and a lookout tower overlooked the desert, a human sentinel against the harsh world beyond. "These people," Lyra said softly, "they've made a home here." Mara nodded. "It hasn't been easy. Sandstorms, predators, rogue AI machines from old wars, none of it has stopped us. Humans are stronger than people think. We don't give up." Kane joined them, and together they walked through the colony. Lyra noticed how every person had a role. Some tended gardens, others repaired machines, while a few trained with tools or practiced defense drills. Even children had tasks, learning early how to survive in this harsh world. As they walked, Mara pointed to a series of rock formations on the horizon. "Those cliffs hold secrets, some old alien ruins, dangerous but useful. We've scavenged tech from them for generations." Lyra felt a thrill. Humans not only survived, they thrived by combining old knowledge, alien artifacts, and their own ingenuity. There was no machine that could replace a human mind here. Every invention, every trap, every solution had been born from necessity and creativity. Kane paused near a workshop, his eyes scanning the desert beyond the colony. "The wastelands aren't empty," he said quietly. "Things live out there, and some things remember humans, the ones who have fought them before." Lyra frowned. "What do you mean?" Kane's gaze was steady. "Some machines, some predators, even some alien constructs, they don't forget. They learn. And humans have to be faster, smarter, and braver." As if on cue, a distant rumble echoed across the desert. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. A sandstorm was forming, a wall of swirling dust and debris moving quickly toward the colony. "Get inside," Kane barked, his calm authority cutting through the panic that could have easily spread. The colonists moved efficiently, securing doors, covering equipment, and helping each other. Lyra joined in, helping Mara reinforce a storage shed and guide children to safety. She felt her own fears melting into action. Humans could face danger and still think clearly, protect one another, and survive. The storm hit with full force. Sand whipped against walls, and the wind roared like a living creature. The colony trembled under nature's fury, but the settlers remained steadfast. Lyra watched Kane stand outside briefly, adjusting the wagon's shields before retreating to safety. When the storm finally passed, the colony was battered but intact. Small repairs would be needed, but nothing had been destroyed. Lyra's chest swelled with admiration. Humans didn't just endure, they repaired, rebuilt, and continued. No force, natural or artificial, could keep them down. Mara placed a reassuring hand on Lyra's shoulder. "See, humans are unstoppable when they work together. This colony survives because we trust each other, learn from our mistakes, and never give up." Lyra nodded, feeling a deep sense of belonging. She realized she had been running from the unknown, expecting danger at every turn. But humans were not victims of their environment. They were masters of it, using intelligence, courage, and teamwork to turn challenges into opportunities. Kane approached, silent as always. "Tomorrow, you'll help with scouting," he said. "You need to see what's out there for yourself. Humans don't just survive inside walls. We venture into the desert, face dangers, and come back stronger." Lyra swallowed her fear and nodded. "I'm ready." The night fell quietly, and for the first time since arriving on the planet, Lyra felt a real sense of peace. The colony was alive, vibrant, and full of people who understood the harsh world and had learned to thrive in it. As she lay on the cot that night, Lyra thought about the dangers that lay ahead, the predators, the rogue machines, and the harsh desert itself. But she also thought about the humans she had met, their courage, their ingenuity, their refusal to give up. They had survived here for decades, and she would learn from them, just as Kane had promised. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, Lyra dreamed not of starships or distant planets, but of humans, standing tall against impossible odds, shaping the world around them, and proving that no environment was too harsh for those who dared to adapt. When she awoke, the sun was just rising again, and Kane was already preparing for the day's journey. Today, she would venture into the desert beyond the colony and face challenges that would test not only her courage, but her ability to think, adapt, and survive. Because out there in the wastelands beyond the walls, the frontier was waiting, and humans would not be defeated. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the warm desert air fill her lungs. The journey was only beginning, but she was ready. With Kane, with the colony, and with the human spirit driving her, she knew they could face anything. And in the distance, the desert stretched endlessly, full of secrets, dangers, and opportunities. Lyra smiled. She was finally part of it, and she would not fail. The desert morning was unusually quiet. Lyra rose early, her body still aching from the previous day's labor helping the colony repair damage from the sandstorm. But exhaustion did not dull her excitement. Today, she would venture beyond the safety of the colony walls with Kane, experiencing the desert frontier firsthand. Kane was already checking the hover wagon, making sure the engines and shields were in perfect working order. "The desert isn't forgiving," he said without looking at her. "You'll see why soon enough." Lyra nodded, adjusting her jacket and tightening her boots. The hot, dry air stung her throat, but she felt alive in a way she hadn't since leaving her ship. Humans survived here not by luck, but by preparation, by foresight, and by courage. The wagon lifted off smoothly, gliding over the golden sand. Kane steered carefully, avoiding the treacherous shifting dunes. Every so often, he paused to scan the horizon, eyes sharp, always alert. Lyra watched him, trying to memorize every movement. This was more than just transportation. This was survival in action. Hours passed, the desert stretching endlessly around them. Occasionally, they passed jagged rocks or the remains of old outposts, reminders that the desert had claimed many before. Lyra felt a thrill, tempered by caution. Every story she had heard from the colonists about predators and rogue machines now seemed real, tangible. Suddenly, Kane brought the wagon to a stop. He raised a hand, signaling for silence. Lyra leaned forward, squinting. At first, she saw nothing, but then she noticed a faint shimmer on the horizon, like heat waves rising from the sand. Then another shimmer, and another. "They're coming," Kane muttered, eyes narrowing. "Who? What?" Lyra asked, her heart racing. Kane did not answer immediately. He adjusted a control on the wagon and a small display lit up, showing faint movements ahead. Rogue AI drones, remnants of a long-forgotten war, were patrolling the desert. They were not just machines, they were hunters, programmed to adapt and learn. Humans had faced them before, and many had not survived. "They're learning," Kane said quietly. "They know humans are clever, but humans are smarter." The wagon's engines hummed louder as Kane steered them in a wide circle, trying to stay out of the drone's line of sight. Lyra held on tightly, her mind racing. This was what she had been waiting for, real danger, real test of skill and ingenuity. The first drone detected movement. Its sensors glowed red, and a low mechanical hum rose into the air. Lyra's heart pounded. Kane didn't hesitate. He triggered a small energy pulse from the wagon, temporarily scrambling the drone's sensors. But more drones appeared, flanking them from the left and right. "We can't fight them head-on," Kane said. "We'll have to outthink them." Lyra scanned the desert, looking for anything she could use. Jagged rocks, a dry creek bed, and scattered debris from old outposts surrounded them. She pointed. "There. We can lead them into that dry creek. The sand is loose and the rocks will slow them down." Kane glanced at her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Good thinking. Follow my lead." They maneuvered the wagon carefully, luring the drones toward the creek. The machines followed, their sensors glowing as they tracked movement. As they entered the creek, Kane triggered a series of small devices he had prepared, traps that destabilized the sand and created temporary pits. A few drones fell in, their circuits sparking. "Now!" Kane shouted. Lyra grabbed a piece of debris and hurled it toward another drone, forcing it off balance. The remaining machines faltered, giving Kane the chance to accelerate the wagon and put distance between them. Lyra's chest heaved, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "That worked," she gasped. Kane didn't respond, focused on steering the wagon through the uneven desert. "It's not over," he said. "They'll learn from this. We need to keep moving." The rest of the day was a tense game of cat and mouse. The drones adapted, coordinating their movements and predicting their path. Lyra realized that these machines were not just programmed. They were clever, almost human in their strategy. But humans had something they didn't: intuition, creativity, and the ability to improvise in ways no machine could anticipate. By late afternoon, they reached a narrow canyon. Kane stopped the wagon, scanning carefully. "We can hide here for a while," he said. "The walls will block their sensors, but we have to be ready. They won't give up." Lyra climbed out, brushing sand from her jacket. She looked at the canyon walls, feeling a strange mixture of fear and excitement. The desert was dangerous, but humans had always thrived in danger. This was no different. Kane activated a small communications device, calling the colony. "Prepare for intrusion," he said calmly. "We may need help soon." Back at the colony, Mara and the other settlers were already mobilizing. Humans had faced threats before: predators, storms, and rogue machines, and they had survived by working together. Every person had a role, and every role mattered. Lyra and Kane set small traps along the canyon floor, using rocks, wires, and salvaged tech to create barriers and confuse the drones. Lyra's hands shook slightly, but she forced herself to focus. Humans didn't give up, no matter the odds. Hours passed. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the canyon in shadow. The drones appeared again, their red sensors glowing in the dim light. Kane and Lyra activated the traps, forcing the machines into a maze of obstacles. Sparks flew as drones crashed into rocks and a few were temporarily disabled. "This is amazing," Lyra whispered. We're actually outsmarting them." Kane glanced at her, a rare smile crossing his face. "Humans always find a way." The battle continued through the night. Lyra learned to anticipate the drones' movements, predicting where they would go and how they would react to the traps. Kane guided her, teaching her subtle techniques for outmaneuvering machines that seemed almost unstoppable. By dawn, the drones had retreated. Some were destroyed, others had been damaged enough to be ineffective. Lyra's arms ached, her body trembled from exhaustion, but she felt exhilarated. She had faced real danger and survived. Humans had survived. Kane guided the wagon back toward the colony. Lyra looked out at the desert, the first light of morning illuminating the barren land. She realized that the desert, for all its danger, had taught her something vital. Humans were adaptable, resourceful, and courageous in ways no machine or planet could match. Back at the colony, the settlers celebrated quietly. The threat had passed, but the lesson was clear. Humans could face any danger and survive, not by sheer strength but by intelligence, creativity, and collaboration. Mara approached Lyra, smiling. "You did well," she said. "Not everyone can stay calm, think clearly, and act under pressure like that." Lyra smiled back, feeling a sense of pride she hadn't known before. She realized that being human was more than just living. It was about thinking, adapting, and finding solutions when everything seemed impossible. Cain watched from a distance, silent as always, but Lyra could see a faint approval in his eyes. Humans had survived in this desert for decades, and now she was part of that legacy. She understood, in a way she never had before, what it meant to be human on the frontier, to face danger, to persevere, and to find strength in intelligence and courage. As night fell over the colony, Lyra lay on her cot, exhausted but awake with thoughts of the day. The desert was vast and full of threats, but humans had ways of thriving where others could not. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she felt ready. She had learned from Cain, from Mara, and from the frontier itself. Humans were not just survivors. They were masters of their environment, able to turn danger into opportunity. And as Lyra drifted into sleep, she knew that whatever the desert threw at them next, humans would face it, adapt, and overcome. The threat had emerged, but so had the truth. Humans were unstoppable when they worked together, thought creatively, and refused to give up. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the desert and the canyon, more dangers waited. But Lyra, Cain, and the colony were ready. Because humans, even at the edge of the galaxy, never surrendered. The sun had barely risen when Lyra awoke to a tense, urgent energy in the colony. Cain was already moving through the pathways, his eyes sharp, scanning the horizon. The events of the previous day, the drones, the desert traps, had been only a warning. Something larger, more dangerous, was approaching. Lyra quickly dressed, fastening her jacket and checking her equipment. The colony was alive with activity. Humans moved with purpose, securing structures, reinforcing barriers, and preparing for what was coming. She had never seen such coordination outside a simulation. This was real, and every human here understood their role. "Lyra," Cain said, coming up to her, "today we face more than drones. Something old, something big. You're ready, but stay sharp. Every decision counts." Lyra nodded, her heart racing. She had learned courage, but this was a test of intellect and teamwork. Humans didn't survive in this desert by luck. They survived by thinking, adapting, and acting together. The hover wagon lifted off, carrying Cain and Lyra toward the outer ridge. From there they could get a view of the approaching threat. Lyra's eyes widened. In the distance, a massive machine army moved across the desert, remnants of an ancient AI war. Their size and numbers were overwhelming, but humans had faced worse. "Looks impossible," Lyra whispered. Cain shook his head. "Impossible isn't a human word, it's a challenge, and humans, we never back down." They returned to the colony, where Mara and the others had organized a plan. Humans were everywhere, setting traps, digging trenches, and placing devices salvaged from old ruins. Lyra joined a team tasked with creating distractions, decoys, false signals, and noisemakers to confuse the AI army. "Remember," Mara said, "machines learn, but humans think. They can't predict creativity, use it." The day was a blur of preparation. Lyra ran wires, adjusted sensors, and helped position barriers. Every action mattered. The desert hummed with tension, the sun burning hot overhead. She could feel the adrenaline in her veins, the fear tempered by determination. Humans had survived here before, and they would survive again. By late afternoon, the machines were close. Their metallic bodies glinted in the sun, moving with precision and coordination. The colony braced, humans ready to implement every strategy they had devised. Cain climbed into the wagon with Lyra, scanning the approaching army. "We hit them where it hurts," he said. "Divide, confuse, and trap. They may be strong, but humans are smarter." Lyra gripped the controls beside him, heart pounding. She had learned how to use the wagon systems, its traps, and its weapons. Today, she would put everything into practice. Humans survived not just with strength, but with strategy, creativity, and courage. The first wave of machines arrived, moving faster than expected. Lyra and Kane activated a series of traps, pits, and false signals. Some machines fell immediately, while others were delayed, forced to adjust to the unpredictable terrain. Lyra realized that this was more than a fight, it was a test of intellect. Humans could improvise, think ahead, and act in ways machines could not. "Keep moving," Kane shouted. "Lead them into the canyon." Lyra steered the wagon expertly, guiding the machines into a narrow canyon that had been reinforced with traps. Rocks, wires, and improvised devices created obstacles that slowed the army and caused confusion. Sparks flew as some machines collided with barriers, others toppled into pits. Inside the colony, humans worked tirelessly. Mara coordinated defenses, directing energy pulses to disable rogue machines. Children trained for these emergencies activated signal flares and guided drones to create distractions. Every person had a role, and every role mattered. Lyra felt a surge of pride. Humans were not just surviving, they were thriving under pressure. Machines may have been strong, fast, and relentless, but humans had intelligence, adaptability, and the ability to work together in ways no algorithm could predict. The battle continued for hours. Kane and Lyra maneuvered the wagon, placing more traps and outsmarting machines that adapted to their initial tactics. Lyra realized that fear had been replaced with clarity. Humans were not just fighting, they were thinking, creating, and using the environment to their advantage. As night fell, the desert glowed with sparks and energy bursts. The machines were diminished, their coordination disrupted by the humans' clever strategies. Lyra could see the toll it had taken on her body and the colony, but the sense of triumph was undeniable. Humans had turned the impossible into a victory through intelligence and cooperation. Finally, the last machines fell into the canyon traps or retreated into the desert. Silence returned, broken only by the hum of the wagons and the soft chatter of the colony. Lyra leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. Humans had faced an overwhelming threat and survived, not because they were stronger, but because they were smarter, braver, and more adaptable than any machine. Kane turned to her, his expression quiet but approving. "You did well. Today, you saw what it means to be human on the frontier. You adapt, improvise, and fight smarter than anything else out here." Lyra smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and humans had won because of courage, creativity, and collaboration. Mara approached, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "This is what humans do," she said softly. "We survive, we thrive, we never give up, and now you're part of it." Lyra looked around at the colony, the exhausted but smiling faces of the settlers, the repaired buildings, the flickering lights of their machines and defenses. She realized that humans were not just survivors, they were pioneers, capable of turning even the harshest environments into home. That night, the colony celebrated quietly. Fires burned, laughter echoed, and humans shared stories of courage and ingenuity. Lyra joined in, feeling the warmth of community, the strength of human spirit, and the undeniable proof that humans could overcome any challenge. Kane and Lyra stepped outside, looking out over the desert. The stars were bright, countless, stretching across the sky like a map of possibilities. The battle was won, but the frontier was vast, full of unknowns and dangers. Yet Lyra felt no fear. Humans had faced worse and prevailed. "You see it now?" Kane asked, his voice low. "Humans aren't just survivors. We're thinkers, builders, and fighters. We adapt where others fail. We find solutions when there seem to be none." Lyra nodded. "I see it, and I want to be part of it. I want to learn to help to survive like you all." Kane's gaze softened. Then you will. The frontier isn't easy, but it rewards those who dare to face it with courage and intelligence. Lyra smiled, feeling a sense of purpose she had never known. Humans had faced overwhelming odds, had outsmarted machines designed to destroy them, and had proven that ingenuity, courage, and collaboration were their greatest weapons. As she lay down that night, Lyra realized something profound. The frontier was dangerous, yes, but humans were unstoppable. They thrived where others could not, survived where others would fail, and adapted to challenges that seemed insurmountable. The desert was vast, full of secrets and threats, but humans had the power to master it, not with sheer force but with intelligence, courage, and heart. Lyra closed her eyes, proud to be human, and ready for whatever the frontier would bring next. Because humans, even at the edge of the galaxy, never surrendered. They faced danger, adapted, and won. And tomorrow, the frontier would test them again, and they would prevail just as they always had.